Today we are going to discuss a new problem going by the name mini villa. First, we'll understand the problem statement and understand the sample input output as well, and then we'll figure out an optimized way to solve this problem. So first, let's take a look at the problem statement. So the problem says that in the deep, dense jungles of Amazon, there is a village named Mini Villa. Now it is called so because the people living here have very little height. Now Antonio and his best friend went trekking into the jungles of the Amazon, and while trekking we got lost and they got captured by the Mini Villa villagers. Now the villagers agreed to leave you if you entertained them. So Antonio decided to entertain them by playing the following game. So first, Antonio asked the villagers to arrange themselves in a line. So randomly, the villagers, there are, let's say, n villagers, they are going to arrange themselves on the basis of their height. Okay. Now then, he asked the villagers to cover their eyes with a black carpet so that they can't see anything. The villagers are going to cover Antonio's eyes. Okay. Now they are going to play the game in K phases. So essentially K phases here means K queries. Now Antonio asked the villagers to give him a random height h, okay, and for the first given height h, Antonio has to tell the first villager that is going to have a height h, okay. So let's say there are 10 villagers having the height from 1 to 10. Antonio gets a height 3, so he has to find out the first villager which is having a height 3. Okay, there can be multiple villagers with the same height also, so you have to identify the first villager having the required height. Now to make the game more interesting, the villagers whose position Antonio told basically move to the front of the line after every phase or every query, and you have to help Antonio so that he gives the correct answer for every phase. So let's figure out the input format. So first you are going to get two spaced integers n and k. Okay, so here n is basically denoting the number of villagers and k denotes the number of queries or phases that you're going to play for the game. And then after that, what is going to happen is next line is going to contain n integers which will denote the height of each and every villagers. And remember that the villagers are initially going to arrange themselves randomly, like there's no ordering, ascending or descending of height. Then the k spaced integers are given, which are basically the k queries or the k heights which Antonio is going to get. And then you need to print for each and every query or every phase, you have to tell the first villager which is having the height h. So you're going to have to print the index where that particular villager is with the required height h. And if there's no villager with a particular height, you just print -1. The constraints are also given, which we'll take a look at. The input is 5 and 5, which is n is the number of villagers, 5 is the number of queries. Each and every villager height given and arranged are 2, 4, 3, 1 and 1. And the 5 queries given to you are 3, 2, 1, 1 and 5. And for this, the sample output has been given. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, and see how we can do this. So this is the screen, and here what we are going to see is first the input is for n and k, which was 5 and 5 only. Alright, then we had for all the villagers, which was 2, 4, 3, 1 and 1. If you want, we can take a look simultaneously as well. So this is 2, 4, 3, 1 and 1. And then for each and every query, the input was 3, 2, 1, 1 and 5. Okay. So for first query, you have to find out the first villager, which is basically having a height 3, right? So you can see that villager is basically at the index 3 if I consider 1 based indexing. Okay. Now based on that, for the first phase, the answer will be 3, right? Because at the third index, the villager is present. And the array gets modified to 3 in the front and then 2, 4, 1 and 1. Now the next query is 2, where you have to identify the first which is in this array is considered at the index 2. So for the second query, the output is 2. And hence this villager moves to the front. So 2 comes to the front and then 3, 4, 1 and 1. Okay, rest all are shifted. Now you have to identify the first villager having the height 1, which is at the index 4 over here. So you take the output 4. Okay. Along with that, now the array basically modifies itself to 1 coming to front and then 2, 3, 4 and 1. Remember, there were 2 ones here, but you have to identify the first villager. The next query is where you have to identify the villager with the height 1, which is here directly at the first index. So the output is 1, and since it is already at the first index, you don't move anything from the front. Now last is with the villager with the height 5, and there is no villager in the entire array or no villager exactly having the height 5. So you can say that the output is minus 1. And hence the final output is 3, 2, 4, 1 and minus 1. So you can see you have to provide output for each and every query, and you can see the sample output 1 is matching with what we found out as well. Alright, now that we know how the question works and what exactly is the problem statement, now we'll take a look at how we can effectively solve it. Now for solving this question, if you would just follow the problem statement, right, and if you just follow and play by the game, that's actually enough to solve this question. Okay, so what we'll do is, let's say the input array is 2, 4, 3, 1 and 1. Okay, now we're going to maintain 3 extra arrays here for some pre-processing. So there is one going to be an answer array which will actually store the final answer for each and every query. Okay, for example, initially it will tell us the position of each and every element in the start. So if there are, let's say, 5 people, I will maintain an array. You can keep the size whatever you want based on your convenience, right? Now the second person is standing at the first position. Okay, so I will go to the second index and I will mark a 1 there. Okay, so indexes are actually the height of the people, and the value at that index is basically the position where the person is standing. I hope that's clear. Now we have 4. Now 4 is standing at the second position. So I'll go to the 4th index and I will mark it as 2. Okay. Now we have the person 3 who is standing at the 3rd index, considering 1 based indexing over here. So now in this I'll have the value 3. Now here you will have the value 1. Right. Now that means that the person 1 is standing at the 4th index. So I'll go over here and this. Now here I have the value 1 again. So what you will see is initially all the values in the array are 0. So whenever you try to update the position for some person of a particular height, and if it is on already non-zero value, that means that person has already been seen, right? And you only need the first person of that particular height. So you can actually leave this. You don't have to update anything over here. Okay. So that's the purpose of the answer array. Okay. Then we will maintain a visited array also. So if you remember the problem statement, there was a scenario wherein you could get in a phase a particular height which was not a valid height at all. Okay, so for that we can maintain an extra array over here and basically mark 0 or 1. So 2 is a valid height, so I will mark it as 1. 4 is a valid height, so I will mark it as 1. 3 is a valid height, so I will mark it as 1. 1 is a valid height, so I will mark it as 1, and this is not concerned. And rest all values will be 0. So whenever you get a height in which the visited array is showing 0, that means it's not a valid height, right? There's no person who's actually existing with that particular height. Okay. Next, what we are going to maintain is it's a top kind of an array. Okay, so now the purpose of the array is, it's a kind of like a 2-dimensional or a jagged array in which at every position I'm going to store what all people are in front of me. Okay, let me give you an example. It also has indexes. Okay, so currently there's a person 2 and no one is in front of it. So for 2, the array would be empty. Okay. Now there is a person 4 in which only 2 is the person who is in front of him. So I'll just add 2. Okay. Now there is a person 3 and he has 2 and 4 in front of him. Okay, so at the 3 I will maintain 2 and 4. Okay, now there is a person 1 who has these people in front of him. So at the first index I will store this. Okay, and so on, like 1 is already there. Rest all will be empty arrays only again. Alright, so these are the 3 arrays that we are keeping. I hope the purpose of each and every array is also clear. Okay, now let's say we start getting the k phases or the k queries. Now let's see how these arrays would change. Okay, remember one thing, let's say in the input, if you have like, let's say 2, 4, 3, 1 and 1. Okay, and let's say you get an input for value 3. Okay, so whenever you get an input for value 3 and when you shift it to the front, okay, the people at the back of 3, their position is not changed. They are still here. So whenever you have a query, you find a person of a height and you move it to the front, only the person in the front of him are moved one step behind, correct? The people who are behind the person who has been queried, their position is effectively not changed, okay? So this is very important that you need to know about, right? And don't forget this part as well. So that is why we're going to do the same thing. So let's say in the first query, you get 3, okay? Now the first position of 3 can directly be received from the index. So go to the, if the input is 3, go to the third index in the answer array and the answer is 3. Very simple, right? But you need to prepare for the next query as well. So you need to do some changes. What all changes are we going to do over here? Visited array will remain same because it just is telling what all values and what all persons have visited, right? The changes are going to be in the answer and in the top array, okay? So what will happen is, I will go to the third index, okay? And for the third index, the people in front of 3 were 2 and 4. And I already told you that whenever a person is queried and he comes to the front, he or she comes to the front, only the people in front of him are shifted by 1 step. Correct? So what will happen over here is, only 2 and 4 will be shifted. So what I will do is, in the answer array, I will go to the 2 index and I will go to the 4th index and I will do a +1 to their values. So here it will 2 and here it will be 3. Which is correct also, right? Because now the array has actually been changed to 3, 2, 4, 1, 1. So 2 and 4 have been shifted. The person who was queried, his position would change to 1 because he or she has come to the front. Now the changes needs to be done in the top array also. Now here we already know, so top array purpose is that who all people are in front of me to be changed, okay? Apart from that, what I will do is, because some people have come to your front who were not there earlier, so at the 2 and the 4th index, in the top array also changes will be there. For example, at the second index, now I will introduce the element 3 which was queried. Because now in front of 2 we have 3. Earlier there was no 1. Then in front of 4 also we have introduced someone. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to add an element to this array. Alright, you can add it in the front, you can add it in the back, that's perfectly your choice. But yeah, this is how you have to do it. Clear to everyone? Now let's do one thing. Let's look at one more query that will actually help us to understand things a little bit better. So this was our array. Let's say I query for 2. Okay, so the next element that you get in the query is 2. So for getting the answer for 2, I can simply go to the answer array. The index is 2, which is mentioned over here, and the answer is 2, which is pretty much correct as well because 2 is indeed at the second index. But now you need to do some changes as well. A visited array remains unchanged. We do the change in the answer array. So in the answer array, the person who was queried for a particular height, his position will become 1, right? And the people who were in front of him, so for 2, the person in front of him was 3, right? His position would get shifted by 1. So 3 would now become 2, correct? And that is what happens actually as well, because 2 comes in front and this is the output array. Now based on that, since 3 was in front of him, right? Now you will go to the third index in this array also, right? And introduce 2, which is already there, so you don't have to do anything over here. I think when you do this change, we also need to change. Okay, so whenever you do this change now, you also have to make this empty also. Whenever an element is queried. So when 2 is queried, you will go to the third index and you will introduce 2 in front of it, and then you will also make this array empty. Remember. Alright, we'll move to the code section now. So what we'll do is first
बोलो। आते हैं थोड़ा देर में, थोड़ा देर रुको। ठीक आते हैं।
and ref for this, and apart from that we will take the input first. So for input, this is a standard way of taking the input from the terminal, right? You don't have to remember it. I'll create a separate video jahan par, we have a proper way in which the input is being taken, but for the time being you can just understand this is how the input goes. Then we do parse int x and this. All right, now this is the whole line of input. So the first line in this input is the value of n, and the second line of input, which has been converted into an array, is the number of phases we have. Correct? Now what we're going to do is we are going to create a new array. You can create it of any size. I'm just taking some default values over here. Okay, and this is the top array that we have, and this is the answer array we have. Well, let's say 51, and then we have the visited array, which is going to have all the elements that we visited, and initially I'm going to fill it with the value 0 because till now we've not visited anything. This is a auxiliary array that I am creating. Okay, now we'll take the input for the array elements. So for taking the input, I'll do the same thing again over here to get the next line of input. Alright, now I'm going to go to each and every array element considering one based indexing. Okay. Now with that, we will have input element as A. Okay, and if A in the visited array has already been seen before, okay, or let's say we do the case where it has not been seen before, let's do a triple check for the strict equality. Okay, then what we are going to do is, now we'll have to do the updates. First we'll have to mark it in the visited array. So in the visited array I'll mark it as 1. Okay, and then in the top array we are just, current array is maintaining the current element seen so far. So in the top array at the first index we will have all the elements so far in the current array. I think it's with triple dots. Okay, and so we have visited the visit array also, and in the answer array the element becomes the index and the value it is present is the value at the answer array. Okay, and now we'll update the current array also because no new element has been considered. Okay, so this is all the pre-processing that we need to do. Now we'll take the input for the k phases. Okay, this is the input that we take for k phases. So we'll go to each and every query. So we'll do while k minus minus. Let t be the current input. Okay, and once we've taken the input, we'll move to the I index. Then if that element that you just got, right, if it is equal to 0 in the array, okay, that means that element has that element or the person with a particular height is not really present. So what we do is, in that scenario we just simply do console.log -1, okay, and we just continue to the next query. Alright, then what do is we do console.log. The answer is directly known in the answer array at the t index. But now we prepare for the next query as well. So first of all, in the answer array, you mark that value as 1 because now the person is at the front. So its index is updated. Now you will see at the person, like the person with the 3 height, who all are in front of him. The people who are in front of him are at this index in the top array. Right now you go to each of those elements who are in front of it. Okay, this is an enhanced for loop, and each and every person who is in front of it is marked with this. Okay, and then what do is all the people who are in front of him, you take those people who are in front of him and you basically push the current element to their arrays, because if in front of 3 we have 2 and 1, so now in front of 2 we have 3, now in front of 1 we have 3 because 3 came to the front. Okay, and also I move the position of all the people in the front also by 1 index. Okay, and now the person who was actually queried, his array will become empty because no one is in front of him. Is it clear? Let's run this also once to see if this is correct or not. View terminal. So this is, let's say we are querying. Okay, I might have had the input already, so I'll take it from here. Now you to print it, you do Control D, and you can see 3, 2, 4, 1 and -1. This is exactly the input which we took. Alright, just to quickly reiterate, this is a standard way of taking the input, so you don't have to write it, you can just simply copy it. Then you have the way we are taking the input for 5 and 5, correct? 5 is the number of array elements and here k is the number of phases we have. Now we are taking the input for all the array elements. So here it was 2, 4, 3, 1 and 1. Okay, now we go to each and every input. A is basically 1 storing 2, 4, 3, 1 and 1, correct? And if the element is not visited, so in the visited array we are first storing the index or storing the position of every villager. So here the height of villager basically becomes the index of answer array, and the position is becoming the value at that. Here 1 means visited, 0 means not a valid height of villager, which has been given in input. Okay, and top are all the people in front of you, which we saw in the example as well. Then we are taking the input for the queries. Okay, let's say the queries are 3, 4, 1, something like that. So we'll do k minus minus, that we are going for each and every query. When we go to each and every query, answer is present at answer of t. T is nothing but the value for each and every query. Now, because this is becoming 1, because the queried height is moved to front, correct? And then what we are going to do is we are going to add 1 to the position of all villagers in front of t. Okay, and reflecting the same in the top array also, because it contains all the people who are in front of you. How do you know all the people who are in front of you? It is present at this index, and then this becomes 0 because t is moved to front. Simple as that, nothing else you have to do. Alright? So I hope the question is clear, and I hope I was able to help you understand how this effectively question works, right? And we've seen starting with the question, then we saw the approach for solving this question, and then we implemented this approach as well. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to look at this question, and I will meet you in the next one.